Okay, welcome to The Burn Beyond Firestop. I'm your host, John Zalepka. Our show is dedicated to life safety and code compliance in the built environment, which puts me on a mission to find the most interesting people in this space to get their unique perspective. Our hope is that our listening audience walks away with an understanding of how our guests and their businesses and organizations contribute to the promotion of life safety of whatever is being built. Now, our show is brought to you by Specified Technologies, Inc., also known as STI Firestop. And since 1990, STI has been a leading global provider of innovative fire protective solutions that help stop the spread of fire, smoke, and hot gases. And our guest today is no stranger to these such topics. Bill McHugh has been involved in the construction industry for over 39 years, focusing on several industries including roofing, waterproofing, fireproofing, and my favorite, fire stopping. Over the past 33 years, Bill served in managerial roles at large and small corporations. He's been a contractor, a distributor, and he's presently an association management professional, which includes his work as executive director of the Firestop Contractors International Association, FCIA, and a few others that we'll get into today. But with that, welcome, Bill.
Thanks, John. Glad to be with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bill. And I always like to start these podcasts on a personal note rather than jumping into the whole business of things. And, I'd like to take you back all the way to the 20th century, if you will, back in North Central College, if you don't mind. We won't say which year in the 20th century, but, after doing a little bit of digging on LinkedIn, I came across something where it said that you were a two-time NCAA springboard diving champ. And, I have so many questions, and, feel free to answer them in whatever order you like, but did you have a go-to dive when you needed a big score? Did you have a really big meet? Did you get some kind of ring or jacket? What was it like being an All-American in general?
Well, very cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it was 1970 something, 75 through 79, and had the opportunity to dive springboard all the way through college. Division III school, North Central, small college, if you will. But, anytime you're competing at the national level, the level of competition changes. And I can tell you that it was just a great experience to be able to compete in my sport for as long as I did. As a matter of fact, I dove all the way until age 48.
Wow.
In the Masters National Diving Championships. But probably the best college program or the best college meet I had was my junior year. Took sixth in the nation on the 1 meter competition. And it was just every dive went in well. And that's the way springboard diving is. You can't have one that's great and 5 that are bad, or one that's great and 11 or 10 that are bad. You got to hit them all in order to stand up on a stand. And it was great fun to be able to do that, and also provide points to the team, because there's a team competition to it all, as well. Although an individual sport, it's part of the swimming and diving team, and good fun to have conference meets as well as individual meets along the way too. Just a great sport, and I was given a lot of opportunities because of it, and have provided others with free coaching because of the free coaching I got through many years. Pay it forward, if you will, because people gave it to you. I guess pay it back for me, because I started coaching when I was 18, and have coached until probably regularly on and off throughout my career. Not full time, but give what you have when you have time, and get the enjoyment of helping others, and then give them the responsibility to pass on what they learned from you. Same thing we do in fire stopping, John.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was perfect transition right there. Did you feel that being a part of a team like that and the competition that helped you transition into the business world?
Well, that helps. And, I can thank my parents, frankly, because, my dad and my mom together, my dad was in business and also in sports. And they started asking me questions when I was a kid, like, hey, what are you going to do for a living? Well, what do you mean, what am I going to do for a living? Well, you're in 8th grade. Soon you're going to start thinking about high school and college, and you're going to have a career. That's your whole life, by the way. What are you going to do? So I chose my career early, like senior year in high school, and got myself a business degree out of North Central, and speech communications and theater, both. And then had the opportunity through springboard diving to get a master's in business by coaching the men's and women's diving team at Western Illinois University, in addition to being a fellow for the Illinois Business Hall of Fame, where you went around and gave presentations, career presentations to high school students. So all I can say is the transition wasn't really a transition. I worked my way through college and was working in big business and small business all the way through. Had some experience, and obviously different when you get into the business world. But so a lot of the skills are the same that you're taught when you're a kid from your parents, as well as the friends of your parents and everyone else that's involved in your life as you grow from a young person into a young adult, and then, of course, onward. So, fun ride.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a pretty fun ride. And before we jump into business, I guess one more personal question for you. Bears fan, obviously, or what?
Well, I was a Bears fan until I got my second COVID shot, and I was talking with Ben Erkovich, the president of the FCIA. I said, I think they put something in that shot that made me a Green Bay Packer fan.
Uh-oh.
He's a Green Bay guy. It's like, Ben, I don't know what happened, man, but all of a sudden I'm just thinking Green Bay.
That's so funny. Well, I'm a Vikings fan in New Jersey, so I'm a bit of an anomaly out here, but I didn't know if we had that little rivalry going. But obviously being in Chicago is how you ended up at Grace, and is that where you first encountered Firestop? Or, I mean, where did Firestop come into the picture in your business world?
Interesting. My parents moved around a bit. I actually started where you are in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
We were in Piscataway around New Brunswick, moved to West Bloomfield, Michigan in junior year in high school, and then Naperville, Illinois, senior year in high school. So did my 4 years of college here. And then you'll love how I got my first job out of college. We were walking around the neighborhood in between years of my master's with my parents, and there was a Grace admixture truck in the driveway of one of the people that were there. And so one of our neighbors, so we stopped and talked to him, and next thing you know, we were talking about people, and it turned out that the guy that hired him was a friend of my dad's, mom and dad's. So being the opportunist, I looked in the eye and said, hey, do you mind if I drop by a resume at Christmas time? Now, mind you, this is 1980, 81. We were in the real deep, dark recession at the time. And he said, by all means, we're always looking for good young people to bring on. So at the time, dropped my resume off and with him, and he did not have a position, but the roofing division did. Next thing you know, I'm going to work for Grace Construction Products in the roofing and waterproofing division, okay. Which then became the Construction Products division. And then everyone came together, fireproofing, roofing, waterproofing, and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of got exposed to fire resistance in the mid to late 80s when I wound up being a district manager for them in Alabama, covering Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, a little bit of Mississippi and Arkansas. But the real exposure to fire stopping came in after leaving Grace and going to Polyguard Products in Dallas, covering the whole country for them, setting up their manufacturers rep and distributor network, where many of the distributors and reps were handling fire stopping, whether it was Dow Corning, 3M. And mind you, this was 1987, so it was just before STI started. These guys were involved in fire stopping. I thought it was kind of cool. So after leaving Polyguard, I wound up with a distributor here in Chicago as a Dow Corning fire stop distributor. And through the years that I was involved there, I wound up in touch with STI and many of the others that may not be around it. Well, they are around. I mean, BioFire Shield's part of Rector Seal, International Protective Coatings, also now part of Rector Seal as well. And several of the others, and Nelson's still involved in the industry too. So got my exposure that way, and then got into it, into the distribution end, eventually in contracting.
And is that how eventually you led into the FCIA? And I believe it was like 1998. You were in contracting for a while.
Yeah. So 1990 started in the distribution business, and fire stopping was one of those things that nobody really knew much about. So as a distributor, I thought, well, gee, if nobody knows about it, how are they going to buy it? How are they going to specify it? How are they going to enforce it in the code enforcement world? So I decided maybe I should become a student of this business and call it a construction discipline, call it a trade, whatever you want to call it, and as a student, start teaching it as well. So teaching started locally and then grew from, a couple hundred people in a room, whether it's specifiers, contractors, workforce, whatever it might be. That evolved into regional presentations, teaching various entities as other associations that wanted to learn about fire stopping. Then it became national associations, whether it's AWCI or NAIA, and all the regional insulation associations, the regional drywall associations, full day and a half programs, generic, of course. Wrote articles about fire stopping, wrote a book about fire stopping in the early 90s. And, when I got into contracting, I was contacted by people that had seen me speak at various places and said, hey, look, we're trying to form this association. Are you interested in participating? I said, absolutely. That sounds great. So got involved in it. And before the association started with our other friends that were part of that startup for the association in 1998. And we had a great team together that all had the same mindset of what they wanted the industry to look like from their perspective. Everyone has their own perspective, but what they wanted it to look like and what an association might be able to bring to the party in 98. And here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, and just for the benefit of the listening audience who maybe they're not as familiar with, what FCIA does, if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about kind of what your mission is, or even why a specialty fire stop contracting firm is so important.
Thanks, John. Well, the first thing is you go back to the start of the association. We all believed in the proper design, installation, inspection, and maintaining protection of fire resistance rated assemblies. And we really, as we were starting, we didn't limit it to just fire stopping. Many were involved in other industries as well, whether it's gypsum wallboard installation, as fireproofing, if you will. And then also many of them were thinking ahead, doors, dampers, fire glazing. But fire stopping was truly the focus of this group of 8-9 people that came together to form the association. And the idea was, why isn't there a body of knowledge from which people can learn, which became the Fire Stop Manual of Practice, of which it's on its 8th edition, just launched yesterday, the chapter on section on standards. Another 80-page chapter will go out probably later this week, early next week. But why isn't there a body of knowledge for people to learn from? Why isn't there some kind of a program that contractor companies can use to separate themselves from those companies that don't think fire stopping is real? I mean, I don't have to tell you or the people in the audience that there are people that think fire stopping is a joke and it's not really something that's taken seriously. Just take this fire caulking and just throw it everywhere. It miraculously will make that wall continuously fire resistance rated. After many, many decades of education, there's still people that don't think this industry really is real and is something that's viable. So why isn't there a way to separate companies? Hence the FM 4991 UL Qualified Contractor Program, and people reading the Manual of Practice, studying for an exam to become designated responsible individuals. Quality programs, the FM and UL contractor programs are quality management system programs. They're company programs where the procedures of the company get audited by a third party. Those kinds of programs to separate those organizations. Then the other question was, why aren't we all together involved in the code development and standards development process? Whether it's code development for standards development for the particular products, bringing the field perspective to the standards development process, or codes. And then importantly, what about inspection? Why don't we have special inspection in the industry like the fireproofing industry has had for decades? Hence the ASTM E2174-2393 standards that actually developed from a question that was asked of the ICC current Vice President of Codes, Mike Pfeiffer. Hey, Mike, how come we don't have inspection for fire stopping like we got for fireproofing? And he said, well, it's very simple. Have you got a standard for this stuff to inspect it? Well, no. Well, then fine. Go build yourself a standard and then come back to the codes and put it in, which the FCIA did, launching our standards committee, hiring a consultant to draft the standards, and then working with our manufacturer partners at ASTM to bring the standard into life. And then the FCIA was the code proponent from 2000 to 2009 to drop it into the 2012 code. So additionally, the maintaining protection, we felt that the reliability of fire stopping is a responsibility for all of us, manufacturers, contractors, distributors, everybody, to teach the building owner and manager and everybody else that maintaining protection for the life cycle of the building has to be there. Why? Because if it doesn't work, they're going to write us out of the building code and the fire code. And if we're able to get the full package, that DIIM, the mission of the FCIA is to find ways to build fire and life safety, effective compartmentation, fire stopping, and have it installed properly. That DIIM, proper design, installation, inspection, and maintenance. I'm not repeating it verbatim, obviously. That's over on fcia.org. Go take a look, and you can find it under the About Us. But really, it boils down to that DIIM and making sure that fire stopping is properly designed. That's right specification, clear and concise, code language that makes sense, that's enforceable, standards that reflect what's actually going to happen in the field, installed by companies that understand and respect the listings. I mean, you guys have invested millions of dollars in these tested and listed systems and your manufacturer's installation instructions. That's got to be respected. And then inspected by inspection agencies that hopefully IASA C291 accredited and have inspectors that have passed either the FMUL Firestop exam, the IFC exam, and then maintain that protection for the life cycle of the building. I mean, if all that goes right, we'll have done our job and left this industry in a place when all of us are long gone, that's a better place than when we started. And I can tell you that it's not just me, it's this whole team, the FCIA, the manufacturers that participate in the industry, STI, of course, and all our other manufacturer members. All of us working together to find a way to make that work and make that whole thing spin to be able to provide reliability of that installed product when it's all said and done. Because when a fire starts, you and I are in the building, we want to make sure that stuff works.
That's right. Wow, Bill, you just answered my next 3 questions. So let me just unpack all of that, right? So you started with the DIIM philosophy, right? The design, installation, inspection, and maintenance. And you're going around and you're trying to ingrain that philosophy in what? Fire marshals, the ICC, even like you said, ASTM. I mean, it's funny. That's a funny story. I'd probably like to hear the rest of it. Like, it just came up as a question. Why don't we have this special inspection? I mean, that's another big one there. Like, it took till 2012 to finally get it in there. And we're still left with authorities having jurisdiction, having to enforce it, right? Is that what we're missing here? I mean, because I get asked this question a lot in trainings, like, why isn't this being done? When you tell them it has 75 feet or risk category 3 and 4, and they're like, well, why isn't it being done? Like, it takes someone to still enforce that, correct?
Well, you ask a good question. It does take not a fire marshal, but a new construction, a building code official. Certain jurisdictions do not adopt the Chapter 17 of the International Building Code, which is where you find special inspections. But I can tell you the FCIA's already been to master spec years ago, and the specification agencies, and planted the independent inspection in there. Matter of fact, in 1994, we had a program here in Chicago with our friend Rich Walkie and I. He at the time was with UL. We did a program for the CSI Chicago chapter. And we talked about inspection, and frankly, they've been putting inspection and specs here since early 1990s. The specs don't always hold, but they do set the stage for something to happen. We know it's not a perfect world, and we know that the industry continues to evolve. And I'll tell you that inspection is important, but without a contracting company that understands the Firestop installation protocol, without a Firestop installation company that understands that trains their workforce to respect your listings and not just go flinging Firestop sealant everywhere or putting in one wrap strip when there should be 3 or 4 around a penetrating item, or just skimming the sealant so it's half the thickness it should be. Without that contractor, that inspection is going to be really, really expensive because it's all time and material. And it's going to be quite difficult, and the building owner manager won't get the proper value. So frankly, When we put in the inspection standards into the code for the 2009 cycle for the 12 code, we had a companion change to put in the FM and UL programs, and it almost got in. Wow. We had key organizations like the OSHPD in California that governs hospitals for that jurisdiction, California, say we would rather see contractor accreditation programs than inspection. It's like, holy cow, that was and that was their testimony. So in our opinion, from the FCIA perspective, it's got to have both that inspection and the contractor that understands the protocol and the complexity that are in your listings. You know, they're not easy to install completely. Certainly some of the material looks easy to install, but understanding the listings, that takes some brain power. And that's where, having the company that understands how to train their workforce to do that brain part is huge for the industry and huge for fire and life safety. Good question there, John.
Appreciate it. And that's why I think also like some of those things that are showing up in this specs, the FM 4991, the accredited contractors, the DRIs and things like that, like hopefully, they're enforced also. We see those popping up more and more. How does a contractor become a member of FCIA? Do they have to have one of those qualifications? Or
well, good question there, John. You just mentioned the FM and the DRIs. Those are two separate things. The FM 499 program and the UL Qualified Contractor Program has a DRI as part of it. That person's not a DRI until such time as they are appointed by the contractor company. The FCIA, the Firestop Contractors International Association, our mission has been to involve people in the industry, get them in here, whether they're FM approved, UL qualified or not, or if they're as a contractor. If they're an inspection agency, they don't have to be IAS accredited either. It's a company-based membership, and we leave it wide open so that we can get people in, teach them the proper protocol for installing Firestop systems to the tested and listed system that you guys have invested tons of money in getting in order to qualify your products for a specific application, and then your manufacturer's installation instructions. We want to bring them in and teach them about that. After that, if they choose to get FM or UL, that's their choice as a company. I can tell you over half of the companies at FCIA are already accredited and growing rapidly. 10 years ago, we were thinking, boy, if we can get to 100 companies, that'd be great. If we can get to 50 companies, that'd be great. Well, we're at 200 between the FM and UL programs, and the coverage is much more than it ever was. And the FCIA membership is expanding rapidly across the globe. Middle East, strong concentration to our friends in Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Got people in Europe. We got people in the Far East. We've got discussions going on in all kinds of other places, whether it's Europe, UK. Got some South America as well, and a large Canadian membership as well. So when we, as an association, when we were forming in 1998, we asked ourselves, should we just be the Firestop Contractors Association, International Association? We chose to put that international in there and not just be your typical Americans that put the international in it and then never really do anything international. In 2008, we hopped an airplane and flew to Dubai and did our first international REAL conference. Certainly, we were meeting in Canada in 2004 and 2006. But, Canada is another country. It is, and we respect that, and it's a great country. But it's not as international as flying across the pond to do something overseas. And so we're continuing to expand that and will in the future as well.
So what else is going on at the FCIA?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, John. In addition to our hybrid conferences and regular conferences, our committees, the FCIA committees, they meet all times of the year. And that's where the programs have come from. The Accreditation Committee built the FM, the 4991 UL Qualified Contractor Program. The Standards Committee built the ASTM E21742393. The Code Committee is what got those standards into the code and works at the code action. Life Safety Digest Committee with the Life Safety Digest magazine. The Education Committee built the Certificate of Education and Achievement Program. I mean, those committees is really where stuff happens. And it's all volunteer members that make it work. If you're interested in joining the FCIA, making a difference in the industry, the committees are where it happens. And, we look for the committees, into the committees for future board members too. People that want to make a difference in their industry, They join the association, they come to conferences, they get involved, and then they join a committee and then possibly move up to board service if that's what they want to do. There's a lot of people that never move up to board service and they just stay on the committees and really, really make a difference in their industry, because that's where the ideas come from and where the association has really found a way to build its programs from. So lots of things going on in FCIA. Committees is just one of the many things. Thanks for asking that question, John.
That's great. So we're going to put that in the show notes for sure, fcia.org for more information on that. And I could talk Firestop with you all day, but we did call the show Beyond Firestop, so we should probably do that. Let's talk a little bit about your company. In 2004, you started the McHugh Company, great name, by the way, which is an association management and consulting firm, correct?
Well, it all actually starts with the FCIA. As a member, I was one of the founding members as a contractor in 1998. I left the contracting business because I was trying to buy a company, actually, the company that I was working for at the time. And the guy decided not to sell it to anybody. He just got sick of the workers' comp claims, and contracting is just a really complex business. You got to buy the material. Well, first you got to bid the project, make sure you estimate it right, get the contract terms right, buy the material, mobilize the men and women to work, make sure it goes in right, collect the money. I mean, there's so many things to worry about. And then the lawsuits that come, you buy the insurance. This guy just got sick of it and said, that's it, I'm not selling this thing to anybody. So it's like, okay, I guess I got to go to work for a living. So went back into architectural sales for a couple of years, and the guys at the FCIA said, hey, Bill, why don't you start this with us? Work a few hours a week out of the back of your house. Help us get it started. Okay, fine. That started, 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours. I then decided to go into my own business, the McHugh Company, pretty much the same time, 1998. Okay. And each of the entities knew what I was doing, working for a living, starting the association. And then the association won. The Association Management Company won. In 2004, we took on the Chicago Roofing Contractors Association. In addition to the Firestop Contractors International Association, it really became an association management company at that point. And my wife, Linda, had been working with me part-time, helping me out with some various stuff. So I took her for a glass of wine and a nice dinner and said, look, I think we can do this together, but I need your help. So the wine won, and she wound up working with me, and she really handles the Chicago Roofing Contractors Association pretty much on her own with another person. In addition to that, about a couple of years later, we took on the National Fireproofing Contractors Association, and then we also manage another one called the Air Distribution Institute, which is fabricators of sheet metal, ductwork, large regional metal fabricator companies. And the four of them work together well and don't conflict, which is really quite good. So when it comes to working, the management company certainly provides services to do association management, but also lots of other things too. Active in the standards development, code development, and building industries together with our manufacturer, contractor partners, inspection agencies, and making our industry do the right stuff. Certainly I'm not the only cog in the wheel. Without our teams at the FCIA, the NFCA, and the CRCA, it just doesn't come together. And frankly, I'm very thankful for the volunteer leaders that I've had a chance to work with, because it's just a very dynamic environment, this association environment. It takes every bit of your talents, whether it's the business, the engineering pieces that I've gotten over the years, and everything else. All of it comes together in one place, and it's just been a blast to do for the last 20 plus years.
It's just amazing how much you're involved in, and it's so important too, because these things are at such a high level of life safety and not only code compliance, right? But since you brought up the wine, let's go there for a second. Let's say you're at a cocktail party, right? Because I get this question all the time. What's the difference between fireproofing and fire stopping? In 30 seconds, for someone that doesn't know anything about the business, how do you define the difference between fireproofing and fire stopping?
Oh, good point. I start with two things. First one is I talk about structural fire resistance for fireproofing. The structural fire resistance would be holding the building up. if it's a steel structure, it's going to need insulation on that steel that's fire resistant, and provides fire resistive. Got to get it right. Fire resistive. Matter of fact, I just had a code proposal put in to change from resistant to resistive, and we won. So the 2024 code will say fire resistive protection of steel, so that when the heat of a fire starts transferring to that steel, you got to keep or any other structural element, got to keep the temperature under the limiting temperature such that the steel doesn't sag or expand too much, break the connections after it expands and bends and warps, and then has that floor collapse onto the next floor, causing progressive collapse. Think World Trade Center. And that's what the fireproofing does, helps hold up the building. The fire stopping is a way to protect the breaches that are made for penetrating items like cables, ducts, pipes, cable trays, all kinds of crazy things, and protect those fire resistance rated wall assemblies that make compartments in buildings. They make those 6-sided boxes to protect that structure so that fire doesn't spread from place to place. Sprinklers are in buildings, alarms are in buildings, we run out of buildings. But we've got to contain the fire to be able to keep it in one place so that it doesn't affect the structure, first of all, and most importantly, protects the people that are in it. The fire stopping stops the fire from spreading from place to place quickly, stops the smoke from spreading when it's got an L-rated fire stop system that's been used in that assembly, and does a whole host of other things to protect us in that building so that we can get out of that structure. Because if you think about it, all the egress compartments, the stairwells, the hallways to get to those stairwells, those are fire resistance rated assemblies in most occupancies, all occupancies actually. And if we can't get into those places protected with a fire building on the other side, then we got a problem. So those two pieces work together, and those are the differences between the two. Fire stopping can help with structure too, because the fire rated assembly wasn't tested with a bunch of holes in it. It was tested with a solid assembly. And the fire stopping protects the structure, so it's not a two-sided fire attack. So fire stopping does both. Fireproofing only does one of those two pieces.
Gotcha. So spray on beams, caulk in holes. There it is. I mean,
simplifying, you got it right there.
Simplifying, there it is. So I just, I want to thank you for your time, first of all, but I just want to see if there's anything that you want to promote. I understand that the FCIA is having a hybrid conference next week. If you're listening to this in the future, that's May 10th through the 13th, 2021. It's great to hear that we're getting back to some in-person events. I'm assuming there's a video component as well with the hybrid.
Yeah,
thanks. Are you excited
John.
to getting back out there?
Yeah, thanks, John. Actually, this is our second hybrid conference. We did one in October. In the association world, people are starting to talk about doing hybrids. We did it, 6-9 months ago, and people are asking me, well, gee, how did you do that? Well, it's magic. We did it in a really cool way. So in Kansas City next week, we've got a great host of speakers. The hybrid portion, if you want to attend, it's wide open. Flights are still inexpensive to get to Kansas City. We're going to do another one in San Diego in late October as well. And the FCIA also launched an education program 2 months ago, actually 3 months ago, the Firestop Certificate. Achievement of this Firestop Certificate of Education and Achievement Program. There's a certificate that's issued for level 1, which just went out the door. Level 2 is going to be really quite a program to educate people in our industry about the depth of knowledge that's required. Then there's a 3 and 4 coming later on too. So there's all kinds of stuff coming from the FCIA. If you're a member, thank you very much, because without your funding, we can't do what we do. If you're not a member, we really appreciate having you join as a member, because we do things to develop the industry so that you've got the right mindset of people that are buying, specifying, and enforcing fire stopping. All of us are working together as a team, whether it's the STI and the other members of the FCIA. I know the International Fire Stop Council's out there doing their thing too, and we appreciate all they do as well. But if you're not a member of the FCIA, join. If you're not a member of the other associations, join them as well, because we're all trying to build the proper DIIM for fire stopping and effective compartmentation, fire resistance as well. The FCIA's got a barrier management services section to help with that, maintaining protection for the life cycle of the building, because the fire stop contractor knows what the right things are to do for the life cycle of the building. And we work together, our manufacturer partners, to get that done, our inspection agency partners, and the contractors as well. So big thanks, John, for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And we really appreciate all you do, Bill, and it was a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better.
Pleasure.
And thank you to everyone for listening. We know that there's many podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to this one, so thanks again. And be sure to check out the show notes for some of the things that we were talking about, especially fcia.org. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post it on social media, leave a rating, a review, whatever you have to do. And to catch all the latest and greatest from STI, please check out our website at www.stifirestop.com. And until next time, this is The Burn.